The Sullivan household exuded an air of quiet stability, modern, elegant, and meticulously maintained, much like Daniel himself. Yet, beneath the polished surface, subtle cracks had begun to appear. These cracks were not in the granite countertops or the perfectly manicured lawn, but in the fragile structure of his marriage to Emily. Daniel sat in his small, sunlit office at home, scrolling through the financial apps on his phone. His green eyes, usually calm and thoughtful, flicked with unease as he noted another anomaly. A boutique hotel charge appeared, one not far from their suburban neighborhood. His jaw tightened. Emily had mentioned a business lunch last week, but surely the upscale Artisan Suites wasn't a place for casual corporate gatherings. Oh, he leaned back in his chair, the faux casualness of the gesture betraying the storm gathering inside him. 12 years of marriage, built on shared dreams, whispered promises, and countless quiet nights. Was it all a facade? Was Emily living a life he only glimpsed in fragments? When she entered the room, the scent of her lavender perfume preceded her. Emily was radiant, as always. Her blonde hair fell in effortless waves over her tailored blouse, and her heels clicked lightly on the hardwood floor. She glanced at him, her lips curving into the smile that had once melted all his doubts. But now, it felt rehearsed, a veneer hiding something darker. "I'm heading to the gym," she said, slipping on her coat. The gym had become her sanctuary in recent months, a place she frequented with a diligence that didn't seem quite like her, and he wondered if it was because she came here when she wasn't feeling well. Daniel nodded, feigning indifference. "Have a good workout." The moment the door closed, his composure crumbled. He turned back to his phone, his fingers hovering over an unfamiliar app he'd installed days ago, a GPS tracker synced to her car. He hesitated. Spying wasn't in his nature, but neither was ignoring the gnawing doubts that clawed at his chest. With a deep breath, he tapped the app. The little blue dot that represented Emily's car didn't move toward the gym. Instead, it veered toward downtown, heading straight for the Artisan Suites. Daniel's hand tightened around his phone, his mind reeling. Betrayal was no longer a suspicion, it was a certainty, and Daniel, ever the methodical thinker, began to craft a plan. He would confront Emily. But not yet. First, he needed proof, the kind that left no room for lies. Daniel's methodical nature had always been his strength. Whether handling work crises or balancing the pressures of marriage, he approached life with precision and patience. Yet, nothing could have prepared him for the betrayal unfolding before him. The Artisan Suites charge was the catalyst, but Daniel knew that one clue wasn't enough. If he was going to confront Emily, he needed incontrovertible evidence. The following evening, Daniel waited until Emily was immersed in her nightly routine. A warm bath, followed by scrolling through her tablet in the bedroom. He'd observed this routine for years, but never considered how predictable it made her. Now, it worked in his favor. While Emily soaked in the tub, Daniel opened her laptop, which she often left logged into her email and social accounts. His heart thudded as he clicked open the browser. At first, there was nothing unusual. Work emails, harmless chats with friends, but deeper searches revealed hidden folders and messages archived out of sight. Among them was an innocuous thread with a name he didn't recognize: Ryan Matthews. The casual tone of their exchanges was almost convincing. However, the words, "Can't wait to see you again," and "Last week was unforgettable," painted a damning picture. Daniel screenshot the messages, carefully emailing them to himself. He wanted to stop there, but knew this wasn't enough. He checked her calendar next. Sure enough, client meetings coincided with every questionable hotel charge he had flagged. The irony was bitter. The same precision Emily used to organize her professional life had laid out a roadmap for her deceit. The next morning, Daniel called Karen, his sister. She was his confidant, sharp, protective, and unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths. "I need your help," he began, his voice tight with restrained emotion. He detailed what he'd found, laying bare the cracks in his marriage. Karen listened quietly before speaking. "Danielle, don't act on impulse," she cautioned. "Get your proof, but keep calm. This isn't just about Emily. It's about how you handle this for yourself." That evening, Daniel rented a private investigator. Though uncomfortable with the idea of surveillance, he knew he couldn't let emotion cloud his decisions. His loyalty to the truth outweighed any hesitations. He handed over the details, dates, places, and the name Ryan Matthews. The investigator's face betrayed no judgment, only a professional determination to uncover the facts. Speaking, along with his protective legal society, Marcus examined the data collection. He told himself a few minutes that the situation was improving and had the power to take truth hazily. It didn't. The wait was excruciating. Over the next few days, Daniel threw himself into work, trying to drown the growing dread. His nights, however, were restless. Emily seemed blissfully unaware, carrying on as if nothing had changed. But Daniel now saw through her veneer. Her phone calls that ended abruptly, her excitement at trivial outings, each moment added weight to his suspicions. It was he. When the investigator called back, Daniel braced himself. The photos told the story he had dreaded but expected. Emily and Ryan, stepping into a hotel together. The timestamp aligned perfectly with her business trip. It was real. The betrayal, the lies, it was all real. Daniel stared at the evidence, the weight of betrayal sinking in. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the pain fully. But instead of breaking, he grew resolute. The time for suspicion was over. Now it was time for action. The photographs lay spread out on Daniel's desk, each one a stab to the heart. Emily's smiles in the images, soft, radiant, the kind that once belonged to him, were now reserved for Ryan. It was a strange clarity that overtook Daniel in that moment, not anger or despair, but purpose. He had the evidence. Now he needed a plan. Daniel sat back in his chair, the dim glow of his desk lamp casting sharp shadows on his face. He opened his notebook, flipping to a blank page, and began jotting down his thoughts. This wasn't just about confronting Emily. It was about ensuring she could not twist the narrative or deny the truth. The evidence needed to be ironclad, the confrontation unassailable. His mind turned to the family gathering scheduled for the weekend. It was Karen's idea to celebrate their father's birthday, and nearly everyone they were close to would be there. Friends, siblings, even Emily's parents. The setting, Daniel realized, was perfect. It wasn't about humiliating Emily. It was about exposing the truth with witnesses who mattered. She had woven her deception into the fabric of their lives. Now, Daniel would unravel it. To prepare, Daniel contacted the private investigator again. "I need every detail you can uncover about Ryan Matthews. His work, his personal life, anything that connects him and Emily," he instructed. The investigator promised results by Friday evening, giving Daniel just enough time to finalize his approach. Hang on. Next, he spoke to Karen, who had become his trusted ally through this ordeal. "I'm going to reveal everything at the party," he admitted, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. Karen was quiet for a moment before responding. "What?" she asked. "You're sure about this?" she asked. "It's going to be messy, Daniel. People will take sides." "Let them," Daniel replied. "I'm not doing this to hurt Emily or make a spectacle. I need everyone to see the truth, so there's no room for doubt." Karen promised her support, though he could hear the worry in her voice. Daniel wasn't blind to the risks, how it might strain relationships or cast him as vindictive, but the alternative was silence, and that was unacceptable. As the days passed, Daniel quietly set the stage. He gathered screenshots of Emily's messages, copies of hotel receipts, and the new photos from the investigator. He compiled them into a neat digital file, ready to display when the time came. He even rehearsed what he would say, pacing his office at night, imagining every possible reaction Emily might have. Her denial, her anger, even her tears. He steeled himself against them all. By Friday, the investigator delivered the final piece, Ryan's own web of lies. He was not only a co-worker, but a man with a history of affairs, some of which had cost him jobs. Knowing this gave Daniel confidence. Emily wasn't just betraying him, she was risking everything for someone unworthy of her trust. The night before the party, Daniel stood before a mirror, staring at his reflection. This was no longer about saving a marriage, it was about reclaiming his life, his dignity, and his future. Tomorrow would mark the end of one chapter and the start of another. With a deep breath, he closed his notebook. He was ready. The morning of the family gathering arrived with a mix of nervous energy and grim determination for Daniel. He dressed carefully in a crisp button-down shirt and tailored slacks, his reflection in the mirror calm but resolute. This was the moment he had been preparing for, the confrontation that would expose the truth and force Emily to face the consequences of her choices. When they arrived at Karen's house, the festive atmosphere masked the tension simmering beneath Daniel's composure. The backyard was a lively scene of laughter and conversation, filled with the aroma of barbecue and the hum of summer insects. Emily floated effortlessly through the crowd, her charm on full display. She laughed with Daniel's cousins, shared anecdotes with his parents, and leaned in close to him now and then, her hand resting lightly on his arm. To an outsider, they appeared the perfect couple. Daniel's heart clenched at the performance. Every smile she gave him now felt like an insult, a calculated move to maintain her charade. But he remained composed, exchanging pleasantries and engaging in small talk as though nothing was amiss. He wanted Emily's guard down when the moment came. As the evening progressed and the sun dipped low on the horizon, Karen approached Daniel. "You ready?" she asked quietly, her eyes scanning the crowd to ensure everyone who mattered was present. He nodded, gripping the USB drive in his pocket that contained all the evidence he had meticulously gathered. Karen clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. "Before we cut the cake, Daniel has something he wants to share with us," she announced, stepping aside to let him take center stage. Daniel cleared his throat, the conversations around him fading into silence. He scanned the crowd, his gaze finally resting on Emily. She smiled at him, the confidence in her expression almost mocking. "Ah," the general said slowly. "I've always valued honesty," Daniel began, his voice steady. "In life, in business, and especially in relationships. But recently, I've come to realize that not everyone shares that value." "Why were you—" A ripple of unease passed through the crowd as Daniel pulled out his phone and connected it to the large TV Karen had set up for the family slideshow. Instead of childhood photos, a series of screenshots appeared. Text messages, hotel receipts, and photos of Emily and Ryan together. Gasps erupted. Emily's smile faltered, her eyes widening as she realized what was unfolding. "Daniel, what is this?" she stammered, stepping forward. Daniel didn't blink and turned his attention towards the skeleton, holding the locked gate together and the compact interior designed to intrude in safety. "This," he said, his voice sharp with betrayal, "is the truth you've been hiding, and I think everyone here deserves to know it." Emily turned pale as the damning evidence scrolled on the screen. Friends and family looked at her, their expressions ranging from shock to disgust. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Daniel held his ground, his voice never rising, his demeanor unwavering. "You had a choice, Emily. You chose lies. Today, I choose truth." The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the sound of Emily's fragile defenses crumbling. Silence spread. The aftermath of Daniel's revelation hung heavy in the air, like the oppressive stillness after a thunderstorm. The crowd dispersed awkwardly, murmurs of disbelief and hushed conversations replacing the earlier laughter. Emily stood frozen, her face pale, her hands clutching at her sides, as though trying to hold herself together. For Daniel, the hard part was over, but the journey ahead was only beginning. Karen placed a reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder as he stood silently, watching Emily. Emily finally broke the silence, her voice trembling. "Can we talk?" she asked, her once commanding confidence now reduced to desperation. Daniel regarded her for a long moment. There was no malice in his eyes, only resignation. "There's nothing left to say, Emily. Everything that mattered has already been said. Or hidden." She reached for his hand, but he stepped back. The gesture wasn't cruel, it was firm, a line drawn in the sand. "I loved you, Emily," he continued, his voice calm but resolute. "But you took that love and turned it into something I can't recognize. There's no going back from this." Emily's tears fell freely now, but Daniel didn't waver. He turned and walked toward Karen's house, leaving Emily surrounded by the remnants of a family gathering she had no part in anymore. As he stepped inside, he felt an odd sense of relief, as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders. The door opening enveloped Emily into the hall. Over the following days, Daniel took swift action to rebuild his life. He consulted with a divorce attorney, using the evidence he'd gathered to ensure a clean separation. Emily's betrayal had gone beyond emotional. It had financial implications as well. Her secret accounts and frivolous spending had left a paper trail, one that Daniel intended to address fully in court. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of the revelation spread through their social circles. Friends who once idolized their seemingly perfect marriage now chose sides, and the scales tipped heavily in Daniel's favor. Even Sophie, Emily's best friend, approached Daniel privately, confessing her struggle to reconcile loyalty to Emily with the weight of the truth. "I didn't know it was this bad," she admitted, her voice tinged with guilt. Daniel's healing came not from revenge, but from reclaiming his life. He threw himself into work, rediscovering the satisfaction of accomplishments untainted by lies. Karen's frequent visits reminded him that love and loyalty still existed, even in the wake of betrayal. Sandros explained it to Burton in his cell. When people lose what they have, they often retreat into meditation. One evening, as he sat alone in his now quiet home, Daniel picked up his notebook and flipped to a blank page. This time, he wasn't planning a confrontation. He was outlining a new chapter of his life, a future built on truth, self-respect, and the kind of love he knew he deserved. For the first time in months, Daniel allowed himself to smile.